Okay.
Upside down. That's interesting.
I was about to say.
Do you see a green screen?
Yes, but you're
Okay.
upside down. That's
Okay.
interesting.
I switched everything around today and I knew better. So we're going to attempt to turn me around.
I thought maybe it was just the cool factor of the show, you know, that you were just going to
Yeah.
do it upside down.
I'm not sure why it did this. It's been messing with me. I changed something earlier. I know better. Don't worry, I can edit everything. So that I know what I'm doing. Let me see.
Yeah.
All right, this way. Oh, I'm still upside down.
This other side of the screen.
Hey, that's different. Upside down, but
You think anybody will notice? Oh my
Still
goodness.
upside down.
And I have people connecting, trying to come in. Perfect. Hello.
Greetings.
We're trying to fix this, okay? All right. Stop immersive for everyone. All right, I'm going to switch back around and let's see what I can do.
I mean, I was kind of digging the upside down thing.
Right?
Virtual background. Why are you doing this to me? Let me see.
Log into Zoom client, click your profile picture, then click settings, click the video tab,
Let me
and
see.
preview the camera.
There we go.
there we are.
There we go. All righty. So, how is everyone tonight?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
All righty. Now, does everyone have their book?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Now, the way this works is it's like a round table. So, although we're kind of like a rectangle, but tonight anyway. Wonder if I can change that one. Let me see if I can change the view. No, we'll leave it like this. I can, but I kind of like it, you know, because I can look at everyone. So, fluff your hair, get ready. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Tonight, you have entered Night Vision, and I am Opus Night. And we have 5 beautiful authors that have joined us to tell us about their lovely books. So, I know you've come to join us, and I know you know how this is done. So please, in the comments, leave a like and subscribe if this is something you want to continue seeing. Alrighty, how is everyone?
Doing good.
Good.
All right, I'm going to get everyone started. I want you to say your name to the lovely folks out there and show us those beautiful books. Sarah?
Hello. So
Hello.
I am Sarah Jessica Curry, and you can call me Jess or Jessica. That's what I usually go by. I'm a middle namer. This is my book, and to me, it's in mirror image. Are you seeing mirror image? Or just
No, I
normal?
see you perfectly.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so this is Emerging Light. This is Sector 1 of the Sphere. This is a somewhat unique title. This is supposed to be the first in an 8-book series, and it has a heart, a mind, and a soul, and I'll tell you more about that as we get into it. But the cover image, my partner actually took the photo around our house, and so I asked her to be like the photographer of the covers, and Robert Harrison, Bob Harrison on Facebook, he did the cover and he did a fabulous job. So
It's
very
beautiful.
exciting.
Definitely.
Did you want me to read the blurb?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I actually watched one of your videos earlier today, and I was like, that's a thing. We're supposed to read the blurb. So, you are made of more. There is a world in you that is more fantastic than you can truly comprehend through your human mind or visualize through your earthly eyes. But you are in luck. You are made of more. What does it mean to be made of more? The sphere is a concept and a story that delves into the heart, mind, and soul of our shared experience on this human journey. Questions will be answered, More questions will be ventured. Dare to dive inward to explore and challenge your own magnificence. It is time.
Beautiful. I love it. Absolutely love it. Raven, how are you?
Hi. Doing good. I'm Raven Oak, local author to the Seattle area, and this is the book I'm currently promoting because this is book 1 in the Boheme trilogy, book 3 coming out this summer, and it's called A Maskin's Blood. I tell people think of the word Alaskan, just with an M, and in this world, Amaskins are a type of holy assassin. And so I will go ahead and read the blurb here. Her name was Adelaide. She was a master in her field, one of the feared order of Amaska. Those who were a danger to the little dozen kingdoms wound up dead by her hand. The order sends her deep into the kingdom of Alexander, away from her home in Sedai, and into the hands of the order's worst enemy, her birth father. The job's nothing short of a suicide mission, one serving no king, no god, and certainly not justice. They say the truth depends on which side of the sword one stands, but they never said what to do when all the swords are pointing at you.
I love it. I know.
It's epic fantasy, but everybody keeps telling me it's also historical fantasy. So take that as you will.
Nice. Very nice. Alexander?
That's me. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully.
Perfect. So I'm Alexander R. Davis, and I'm gonna see if something silly works to show you my book. So hopefully it does. So,
Oh, it's bad, isn't it? You can't really see
No,
it.
actually, I think it looks good.
So is it too dark?
The figure itself is in one of the wings,
Bummer.
but
Well,
it's definitely pretty.
well, that's it. I should have just had a copy ready. I thought it'd look good on there, but
that's okay. I can still read you the blurb. So the blurb here is, it's actually kind of a dialogue, so it's a little different, but it is, if you could stop all of this, would you? The hero asked. Randrum knelt before the hero, who was adorned in his blood-stained armor. That armor had once been bright and gleaming, but no longer. Randrum only lifted his eyes, too weak to stand. He hardly noticed the blood-red snow or the still bodies around them, which he himself would soon join. Of course I would. But it's too late, Randrum said before going into a fit of coughing. Once he recovered somewhat, he raised his eyes to meet the hero's gaze. No one can turn back the hands of time. The hero crouched down before Randrum, still holding his gaze. But what if one could? So this is it's a fantasy, and I guess you could call it an action adventure with a little sprinkling of romance. And I just did the blurb a little different, a little piece of it to see how that would hit with people.
Very nice. I like it. I definitely like it. Whitney?
Hi.
Hi.
All right. So this is my debut novel, The Obsidian Sword. It is a steamy adult fantasy romance. Yeah. It's the first of 2 in the Obsidian Artifacts duology. The second is the Obsidian Crown, which I just finished and I'm going through edit time. But the blurb, what started as a simple journey quickly turns into a race to save the world where magic's secrets and love collide. 21-year-old Ren is on a journey to Valesia, the land of the Light Fae, to learn how to use her newly discovered light magic. However, when she finds herself hunted by a group of men intent on ending her life, she turns to Silas, a handsome, dark stranger, to keep her safe. On a mission of his own, Silas agrees to help Ren to her destination. Now he must decide where his loyalties lie, with his people or the intriguing woman he met on the road. Together, they uncover a plot created by the Dark Fae, a plan so evil it will destroy the human realm. Ren and Silas must join forces, despite the differences and secrets between them, to find the first of the obsidian artifacts before chaos ensues.
Very nice. I like that. Definitely. Jay?
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks. I'm J.S. Willis. I'm a fantasy author. I write fantasy. I've got 3 children's books out. I've got a middle grade book out, and I've got 3 epic fantasy books. I put out the first trilogy in my Sphere saga, not to be confused with Sarah's Sphere. The first book is Dream of the Sphere. That's book 1. We have Dawn of the Sphere. That's book 2. And War of the Sphere. That's book 3. And I'll read you the blurb from book 1 here. 3,000 years of tradition torn asunder. When the truth comes out, will a hero emerge to pick up the pieces? Bashira Eisenhart takes ultimate comfort in her community, so she's thrilled when her brother ascends to the coveted order chosen to protect the world from safely sealed away millennia-old dangerous magic. But her faith in her beloved parents' loyalty cracks after she spies her mother sneaking about town to meet with the enemy. Striving to stay focused on her own academic studies, Bashira becomes caught in family tensions that soon reach a boiling point. And as her father's brotherhood and her mother's rebel group head toward a cataclysmic clash, the young seeker finds herself trapped by conflicting choices. Will she face her fears and accept her role in a grand destiny? And that's it. That's the first book in the trilogy, Dream of the Sphere. I published those last year in October, November, and December.
Beautiful. Well, everyone, I think they all sound amazing. So we're going to get into the topic tonight. And tonight I want to talk about, well, I end up getting each week a lot of emails that they ask various questions from viewers. And I want to know, what is the most difficult part of editing your book? And the reason I'm asking this is I have gotten numerous questions regarding editing. Now, I know that there are authors who will send it off to someone to have them edited. Now, has anyone edited their own work? Speak. Anyone?
Go, Alex.
You want me to go first?
Certainly.
Okay. So I kind of did a collaborative edit, but I did a lot of editing because there's stuff only you know how it's supposed to be. But I think one of the challenges for me was to keep all the little details about a character consistent, and like trying to find all those places where maybe I veered off the path with that character. That was kind of a challenge with me. I had to go back through it quite a few times just to make sure it was all tight.
Now, was there ever a time you found that you lost sight of the characters during editing and kind of slimmed them out too thin and had to go back and fix them, so to speak?
Yeah. I had gone through like 2 edits already, and then I realized that one character was just completely off of what I wanted it to be, and I had to go back and edit the whole thing another couple times. And yeah, there's been some times where like I changed it and realized that wasn't the right thing to do, so I had to do it again.
And did it add to the page count, or did it take from?
So most of the time, it actually kind of lowered the page count, because rather than kind of like rambling on or adding scenes that don't need to be there, that just don't really develop that character. So I was able to kind of cut it down a little bit so you get more of the character and less just, let's go do this.
Very nice. Anyone else?
Sure. So I'm actually what they consider a hybrid. So I have a lot of work that's traditionally published, and then I have a lot of stuff that I do through micropress or self-publish. And even my self-published stuff, I do hire an editor who, you know, is a professional editor and can go through and do things. Because even though I edit my own stuff, you're going to miss things. So for me, part of the writing process is always going to be editing. But the hardest part for me sometimes is when I write my early drafts and some of my later drafts, even, I'm a really tight writer. So I end up with a very slim manuscript. And some of that slimness comes with the characters, because I'm the kind of reader that I don't want to read 5 pages of description like a checklist about your character. I like to be able to paint the picture in my own mind sometimes and add my own details. So when I write my characters, I often don't describe them enough in early drafts. And so for me, revising and editing is actually adding content instead of stripping away. It's adding in those character descriptions in a way that makes it part of the story rather than an info dump, but also making sure I've got just enough in there for the readers to be able to know what they look like, but also add, you know, their own creativity to what the characters look like and the world looks like. And that's a hard balance for me sometimes.
Now, how does it feel switching between the two, the being traditionally published and then indie?
You know, it doesn't bother me too much. A lot of my traditional works tend to be short stories published in magazines and anthologies, and I don't mind that so much when they decide, oh, you know, we want you to change this about the story or whatever. Whereas with some of my novels, like A Maskin's Blood, that is a world I created, and I don't want an editor to come in and tell me, well, no, that doesn't make sense to me in the world. And instead of it actually being a logic problem, it's just they don't like that. You know, perhaps they don't like redheads, you know, whatever. And so I like the power it gives me to be self-published on some of the larger works where I have more invested in them. And it's not so hard to switch back and forth because I kind of keep a good line of where I know I want to be and what I'm willing to send to a trad publisher and what I'm not, if that makes sense.
And do you find that you have more freedom when you are indie publishing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my cover artist is in the UK and he makes beautiful covers for the big publishers over there. And I was able to hire him and not have anybody tell me, no, you can't use that cover artist. You know, I got to interview my editor at a convention and make sure that she had the experience I wanted before hiring her. And if I didn't agree with her changes, I didn't have to take them. And so that's kind of the nice thing in the freedom of indie.
Very nice. Now, Jessica?
Yes. Go ahead.
No, you were going to add to it, dear.
Oh, I was. So mine is, it's not just a linear story. I do have a story portion in my book, but it's actually threefold. There's a concept in the story called the sphere. And Jay, I really want to read your books just because of the title. I've actually seen the images of your book covers online, I think on the Facebook group, and I was like, ooh, sphere. But the sphere in my book is a concept that basically we're all on some kind of cycle at any point in our lives, that whatever we're going through, we are going around, you know. And at the beginning, usually there's more light, there's more lightness, there's more naivete, there's more hope, and then as you travel, you tend to kind of find the shadows, and you find the dark places that where fear resides. But there's also a concept in there that fear does not exist. But anyway, and then it goes on to, you know, you keep going, but you push through and you come back around to that light place again. But it happens over and over and over. And so whatever experience you're going through, whatever little thing might be happening in your life, it could be a small moment or it could be an eon of adventure that still goes through that kind of cycle. And I've actually looked at a lot of like movie scripts, and you know, The Lion King is a great example of going through this process. But beyond that, the life cycle of a star, the life cycle of a tree, the caterpillar, you know, things like that, all just, I was amazed when I started looking to find things that would fit into that concept, and so many things did, so much that I did not put in this book. And that's why I want to continue with it, you know. But so that's the concept part. And then there's a very short story about creator and child. And I won't give any more details on that because it's so short that pretty much anything I say would be a spoiler. And then the last portion is the poetry. Don't run away. That's one thing that people will say, what is your book about? Or what is your book? And sadly, society's viewpoint of poetry has gotten such a bad rap from all the, you know, really difficult classical poems that they've been set to as homework in college or in high school. You know, you've got to interpret this, and it's mind-boggling. But one thing that somebody said this week to me about my poetry that was awesome, they said it's poetic without the what did she say, complexity of poetry or something like that. So intimidation of poetry, that's what she said. It was poetic without the intimidation of poetry. So for me, I know we're talking about editing. For me, the editing portion was putting it together, because I had written a little about the sphere. I had written poetry over the years, and then I had written this short story. And I never kind of got to the point of publishing the poetry because it just never felt, it always felt disjunct, you know, like disjointed and not a flowing thing. But once I got the sphere concept put together, it's 8 distinct parts. So you think about your 3rd grade fractions, you know, you got the 8-piece circle, right? But it's 8 distinct, basically kind of phases, I guess, in life and your journey. And when I started looking into it, I realized this is where the poetry falls in, because the poems bring to life the concept. And so instead of, you know, giving somebody a book that's all just a concept, something you have to think about, or giving them a story to follow, or giving them poetry, it's all in one book. And so my partner and a coworker of mine lended their voices to the audiobook version so that each of those heart, mind, and soul, each section could be very distinct. So yeah, I hope that.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And trust me, on this show, we love spoilers.
Okay.
They tune in for the spoilers. Trust me on that one.
I love it.
So if you have any, by all means, let them out, because they will go back and they will check on these things, and they will just fish through the books and be like, where was this at that they said? I couldn't find it. And I love it. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Exciting. I know. And then I have to contact the author, and I'm like, where did you hide this? Do I have to go get the book now? But yeah, that's definitely beautiful. Jay.
Yeah, the hardest thing, well, two of the hardest things for me with editing, my Sphere saga, when I started writing it too early, and I didn't recognize that fact. I struggled with it after a couple of drafts, and it was epic fantasy, which I love to read, but I have so many point of view characters and so many plot lines going on and so much world building, and I had to walk away from it. And I walked away from it, and I started writing the middle grade book, which was first person, one point of view. It was a middle grade book. It was much simpler, and it just came together like that. And I developed my craft more writing that book. And then I went back to the first book in my Sphere saga, and things started coming together better. And I realized I wasn't yet ready when I was writing that to write the book. I wasn't ready to write the entire series. So then I actually worked with a developmental editor for a while. She helped me pull a lot of things together: theme, plot lines, character, consistency with everything. And I was able to get several drafts done and actually get the book to a readable format. And I knew it was going to be at least 3 books. So then the only good thing that COVID has done during the pandemic in 2020, I dove into pulling all 3 books together. I finished the best draft that I had so far of the first book, I had started already into the second book. I'd already started part in the third book, couldn't pull them all together, but then I basically, it just flowed. I went through a new draft on the new revision on the first book. I went straight into the second book. I wrote through it. And then I wrote through the third book, and then I went back and revised all three of them at the same time. So it came all together as one cohesive whole. And then the second thing that was the hardest for me editing is knowing when to stop. I mean, authors, we always want to make it perfect, and you got to realize at some point it's not going to be perfect, and you got to know when to stop. And for me, working on all three of these books together during 2020 and pulling them all together, I was able to do that. I was able to look and say, okay, I've added in the foreshadowing here from book 3 that wasn't in book 1 when it needed to be, and then I pulled this that is in book 2 that needs to be in book 1, and this needs to go. So I was able to weave all that together, and then I pulled it all together, and then I knew, oh my God, it's done. So then I sent it to a copy editor, and she proofread it, and then I did the final edit on all 3, and it was done. I published it. So I think those are the hardest things for me.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing. Those are the hardest things for everyone who's ever written. I mean, even when you're editing, a big portion you're looking for those little plot holes, and they sneak up in the craziest places, and that is the most fun it's also the most fun with myself, that I love editing. So when I got this question, I said, you know what? I'm not answering it myself. I'm going to do it on the show. I want to make sure that, everyone has an opinion that they can voice to all of the viewers out there. And that way they can get different decisive things, and then come together in their own thought. And on to Whitney. What is your opinion on this subject here?
For me, I'd have to say probably the hardest part for me is cutting out pieces that aren't necessarily needed. I tend to write more wordy, and then when I edit, I go back and take out things that aren't necessary. But when I get to that point, I feel like, I created this. This is, important to me. I don't want to get rid of it. So that's one of the hard things that I struggle with. And then reading your work over and over and over again, trying to perfect it, and I start to just second guess myself. I get that imposter syndrome going, and I start to think like, oh,
Definitely.
not not working. It's not working. And it's kind of like Jason, you just have to know when to stop and kind of let it go.
Sounds like you and Raven need to work together, because she starts bare bones and builds up, and you go the opposite direction.
Kill your darlings. Yeah.
And I just work with bones. I write dark literature. So Orpheus, who is actually hiding tonight, is a skeleton. And when I am editing, it's so funny, because I will have him sitting right next to me, and it's kind of a constant reminder of, okay, you got to cut these characters down. If I don't, then if I don't flesh it out, it's not going to be as concise as I need it to be for the reader to understand it. Because it's real easy to fall into that syndrome of telling the story the way you want to tell it, but it becomes more your story and your interpretation than being able to write for someone else to understand, So how do you avoid that? See, every question I ask will lead into another question. That's just kind of what I do. I hope you've seen that when you viewed the show. Did you notice that one, Jessica?
Yes.
And I love to put people on the spot.
I see.
So how do you navigate through, okay, this is very dramatic and very hurtful, but am I taking a story and leading it too far into towards my way, as opposed to not for the readers? So how do you avoid that, Raven?
Well, I'm lucky that I spent a good chunk of my earlier days as both a computer teacher and an English teacher. And when you are teaching middle schoolers how to write, then you have to be able to put yourself, distance from what you're reading, because you're trying to help them learn how to tell a better story or how to persuade someone or whatever the focus of what they're writing is. And so you have to be able to step back and put on your editor hat and just be kind of impassive to what's happening in the story for parts of the editing to be able to help them be better. And so having spent time doing that, when I go to edit my stuff, I take off the writer hat and I put on the editor hat, and I tell myself, okay, don't get involved in the characters. Don't get involved in the way that you are when you're a writer. You need to go through and look to make sure that their character arc is consistent, that how they respond to things is consistent, that what they respond with is pushing the story forward rather than just, oh, I really liked this paragraph and I kept it in there. You have to be able to step back and do that. And so that's pretty much how I learned to do that, was teaching.
Yeah, my mother was an English teacher as well. So I always loved reading, but when it came to, I guess every skill that she ever taught me, when it came to English or even grammar itself, I am someone that I'll hear my mother in the background, like, that's supposed to be changed, or you're supposed to fix this, or what are you doing here? And I have such a respect and such a regard for all English teachers at this point, because it is one of the hardest things that I think to be able to have children voice their opinions, their thoughts, their feelings, and then teach them how to literally recreate everything, to tell a story, there's so many different things that come into play, plus capturing their attention.
Absolutely.
So.
People look at me when I tell them I have a master's degree in computers and that I've taught computers. They look at me and go, "Oh man, that must have been so hard." And I'm like, "No, that was easy, honey.
Yeah.
That was the easy thing."
I can attest to that. Okay, so how do we begin a story when you are looking through? Okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to edit this beautiful book that I already know is perfect. How do you find those plot holes? Whitney?
I rely on my beta readers for that a lot, because I feel like you get so caught up in the book, in your own story, that it's easy to miss those pieces. So I also hire an editor. So between the editor and my beta readers, I feel like I rely really heavily on them to help me catch those and help take me out of the story a little bit, similar to what Raven said. So that way I can see those a little bit better.
Okay. Jay?
Beta readers are awesome.
I think what I've found is time and distance. You write it, and then I have to walk away from it. What I've learned is I have to walk away from it and go on to something else and work on something else. And by the time I get back to it, then it's kind of like you said, then I'm no longer in the writing phase of it, and I'm in the editor phase, and you have to learn to embrace and love revisions. So when you get that time and distance, you can do that. It's not so close and near and dear to your heart. It's not that primal thing that you have created there, that it's your Frankenstein and you have to control it. You can mold it how you need to, and you can tear it apart. It's just time and distance is, I think, the best answer for that.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Alexander?
Yeah, I'd like to just say what they said, but I think one other thing, or maybe two other things that really help me to kind of find those plot holes a little bit. One is I need to read through like continuously. I can't work on one chapter for a week editing it, or I'm not gonna necessarily pick up on things. So I have to read through all of it fairly quickly, and that helps me see, oh, back here I had this thing that was supposed to come into play or was not supposed to come into play. And it helps a lot if I go through it quicker rather than going through really slow. So kind of a quick edit first helps me find plot holes. And another thing that may sound kind of strange because it doesn't seem like it would change anything, but reading out loud sometimes helps me find it too.
Definitely. Now, where in a story do those characters that you create, how do you know how tight to edit them? Which ones need to be edited, and how do you know how tight the editing has to be on them to fit in that world? Raven?
Oh, wow. I was just thinking, I was like, wow, how do I answer that question? I think for me, some of it depends on whether they're minor characters or major characters. If they're my point of view characters or they're tangential to point of view characters, meaning that, there's somebody who is in most of the scenes with these major characters, then it's really important to make sure that I'm being true to their characterization. So if I have, a main character who is really plucky, but really clumsy, then if somebody comes running at her with a sword, then it would be out of character for her to, be this expert swords person. She's clumsy. So every reaction has to fit that. And so as long as I'm being true to that and I'm making sure that my major characters are whole characters, they have perks and they have flaws and strengths. And as long as I'm doing all of those things, then for the most part, I don't have to edit them themselves too much at all. They just, at least for me, they come out of my head correctly and it happens on the page, and there's very little to edit. My problem is sometimes my minor characters jump up and go, hey, I want to tell my story too. And that happened with The Masculine's Blood. There was a character who was originally a minor character who became a major character and is now getting her own book because the fans have basically said, if you don't tell her story, we might stab you. So it's like, okay, I got it. And so, that's kind of where the balance comes in. And I struggle sometimes, I think, with those minor characters because I want everybody to tell their story.
Oh yeah, and it's very easy to have your main characters, but I always speak of secondary characters that they can be so profound. Like you can get into writing them and you don't realize how significant they become. By the end of the book, you're like, why didn't I think of you as a main character? And I've actually had readers that have said, oh my God, how did you do that? Why are you building her in the beginning smaller, and then all of a sudden, she's sensational at the end, and I'm like, what did I miss? And then I'll go back and read it, and I'm like, oh my God, she really single-handedly was an amazing character.
Well, I call them minor characters, and I really guess I shouldn't because they're really supporting characters.
Yeah.
And they are impactful sometimes in ways that are necessary that you don't expect. But if you were to pull them out, your story would unravel.
Exactly.
And so, it's necessary for those characters to have their own buildup. It's just you want to make sure it's not, the same buildup you see with your main point of view characters. And so, they're supporting cast.
Definitely. Alexander?
Oh. So this is a hard question. Why are you asking me?
Because I enjoy this.
I think probably something that helps me kind of know is, a lot of that same stuff, like if they're in character, but a huge thing, at least for me personally, I know that they're where I want them to be if I feel about them. That's not a very good way to explain it, but if I can get attached to the character then I know it's where it should be. If I keep looking at the character and like question it, like, why did that happen? Why are they doing that? Then I know something needs to be changed. So the big indicator for me is just if I can get really attached to the character, then I know they're edited properly, you could say.
Got it. Good answer. Jessica?
It's just fascinating to hear this, because what I usually end up writing is poetry, but a lot of times characters pull themselves into it. And so I had a 4-stanza poem one time that I had written, but this was years ago. I've evolved a lot over the past 10 or so years. And at the beginning of my writing, I was about 16. I was writing a lot. And then in college, I wrote a lot. And then after that, I kind of paused for a while. And so I went back and looked at one. And like I said, it was 4 stanzas. And I had it up on the computer. And the first 2 stanzas, there was a woman who was in a really dark place. And it was like leading in the direction of she was going to have a really bad night, right? And then at the end of it, I was like, but then this happened and everything was good and everything was okay. And years later, looking back at it, I was like, that's not how that was going. That's not the direction that was headed. My personal determination to be a positive person and not to scare people or not to, add darkness into something that I had those fears. I didn't know how to handle it at that point. And I realized no. And so I looked at the poem on the screen and I put my cursor between the second and third stanza and I just hit enter. And I did it until I couldn't see the last 2 stanzas anymore. And I went back up and I finished the poem, but I wrote it the way it should have ended. And so I think the last line was something like, she didn't know if she would see the next day. And that was it. And that was okay. That's how it was supposed to be. And so to me, if I write something, usually I listen to the characters, I let them write their story. And I have not written a character to the point of a full novel. And now I've got to go back and make sure the foreshadowing is there, like Jay said, and things like that. But I have had the experience of writing a character, and in one, I've written 2 very short stories. And in the first one, she was Colleen, and it was from a different character's perspective, and they were calling her Colleen. And then later, I just got this itching to write from her perspective. And as I started the first line, it was, my name is Connie. And I was like, oh. She said, I might be named Colleen, but I go by Connie. And I was like, yes, ma'am. I felt like this character was talking to me, like, you did not use the name that I prefer. And so it was very interesting to me, because that is how, anytime I've sat down to write an actual narrative, it's like I'm taken over by the characters. And so it's really interesting, because usually it goes pretty dark, which is funny to me, because Emerging Light, right? This first book is very positive, very, hopeful energy, but it's also real talk. But when I write something that's a narrative, it's almost like if I write a story, it touches those deep, dark, secret places. And that's what's able to, it's kind of cathartic. That's what comes out. And so I love to read a book where I don't have to know that your character, like you say, Raven, has brown eyes and, blue hair and purple skin. I don't have to know all that in the first paragraph. But if you mention it along the way as you're going on an adventure, and it just happened that his purple skin was highlighted by the, that kind of thing, then you kind of see it just flows with the story. And that's fascinating to me. And I actually, one of the things I love to do that I've just discovered is and honestly, I don't know all the names for the different kinds of editing. That's something I've learned in the past year, but I believe it's content or developmental editing, where you have the character, and I actually got into it because I do narration. And so I was narrating this book, and I told the author, hey, I have a couple of ideas, like editing ideas. And I kind of had to feel the water out, and he was like, oh yeah, that's cool. So we ended up kind of revamping a lot of the book. And so I'm narrating it again. But anyway, we went through, and one of the things, it was like the character was very like mysterious and whatever. And then he said something that was really flippant. And I was like, it just doesn't feel like him. And so I like what you were saying, Raven, about, just learning their personality and understanding who they are. And so when you get into that situation of what am I going to do? Am I fight, freeze, or, what they would do because you know who they are. So that's, I think funny enough, that goes with poetry as well. You start to write it and then realize this, the personality of this, the energy in this poem is dark. It's going in this direction. Don't just whip it around. Don't give it whiplash and turn it around and make it happy, or make it, a totally different emotion than it started with. Let it be what it is.
Definitely. Very nice. Whitney?
But kind of along the same lines that Jessica and Raven said, my characters have a life of their own, and they kind of, I just kind of let them do their thing and see where it takes me. I don't plot. I'm a total pantser. I just go with the flow. And so when I start writing, they develop as they go. I have an idea of who they are and where I want them to be at the end. But, a lot of times they veer off into their own path, and I just kind of like, okay, didn't see that one coming. But, I go with it and let it do its thing. And if it works, I keep it. And if not, then we have to bring them back in. But, I try not to edit them too much unless I'm seeing there's something like major glaring, what's happening is not matching with their personality and that type of thing. But otherwise, I kind of, they've kind of become like your family, your babies, and I, kind of just, they have their own lives. So I let them live them. That type of thing.
Got it. Yay.
I think it depends on the book and what kind of book it is you're writing, and from book to book, series to series. Like for me, I'm an outliner. I'm not a pantser, but I'm a macroscopic outliner. I outline broad strokes. I don't go, down to the details. So I guess in that respect, I am a pantser, because I'll have points A, B, C, D, but I don't necessarily know how I'm getting from A to B until I start writing it in detail. Like, in this first book, in Dream of the Sphere, I do different editing passes after I get, the first primary draft done, and I'll do like a description pass, filling in, like Raven was saying, filling in description, filling in those kinds of things. But then I actually also, in this series, I did like a character mapping. I mapped character arcs out. I actually created an Excel document and took every character and went through and reread everything and plotted out, okay, this character starts here, and then this incident happens here, and just kind of plotted each one of their character arcs out, and then went through that spreadsheet and color coded each one of them. And you can see, okay, I'm really focusing too much on this character versus this character doesn't have enough time. And then you have to decide where the balance is and what you're going to do with it. And through that process, I even discovered I had one character that I was using as a world building tool. He really didn't have much of a character. He was actually just a maintenance worker, and things were going wrong in the world. The world was starting to fall apart, but people weren't seeing these microscopic details of what's going wrong, except for this poor maintenance worker. But he didn't really have much of a personality or any conflicts or anything. He was just in there as a device for me to say that this stuff's going wrong. And I pulled it out. And I really liked the pieces that I'd put together with it, but I ultimately had to pull all of his stuff out and just trash it. It's saved on a hard drive somewhere, and I may yet go back and do something with him, but I had to replace him with somebody else who was actually tied to something else, had a personality, had a family, had a stake in it, and actually was in the middle of conflicts, and it served the same purpose, but she actually became a fully fledged character. So I mean, that's the best answer I've got for you.
Okay.
Jay, you and I would get along with the spreadsheet stuff. I'm doing the same thing. I'm grabbing the poetry out of here and writing a sequel for each poem, so that once I get to the end of the 8 books, I'll actually have like 56 long poems that could like stand alone. But that was something of course, I've got my spreadsheet out going, what would be the rest of, how would we follow these along and make them all flow together? So definitely got the spreadsheets out, or a sheet of paper that I folded so many times that I can draw the lines on it,
Yeah, well, to me, it also helps with pacing. I mean, it helps me in a graphic form. My pacing's off here. I can't spend 3 chapters on this one character. I need to bring this, bring this in and this in. And
Now, do you think of pacing during the editing phases, or is it something that you have the mindset from the beginning to watch the pace as you're building the story itself?
For me, it's more in the editing, but I also tend to write chronologically. So I'm an outliner, like I said, so I will know broad stroke points, but I don't know how I get to those. So I will, and then I'll discover if that is a pacing issue in the editing, I think. And I don't know if that helps my pacing or not, but I have to write it chronologically. I can't write the first scene of the book and then go to the end, because something might happen halfway through that's going to change how the end plays out, even though I know what the end is going to be.
Gotcha. Raven?
I tend to do it during the writing phase. I follow, it's a tool called Scene and Sequel, and the book is somewhere behind me on the shelf, but I can't remember which one it is. But the idea is that every scene you write is either a scene or it's a sequel to that scene. And so when I go through and I've made my basic outline, I do it on note cards before I put it into Scrivener. And then I lay out the note cards and I start going, is this a scene or is this a sequel? Is it a scene? Is it a sequel? And the idea with that is that your scene establishes a problem. The problem happens to the character. And then in the next scene, or however you want to think of it, you can even think of it as like pages or paragraphs, but in the next chunk, your character needs to respond to that problem and to what happened to them. And when they respond to it, it then creates a new problem. And now they got to figure out how they're going to respond to the new problem. And then the next scene is that new problem, and it happens to them. And then they got to respond to that. And so it keeps the pacing ramping the correct way through your plot. You can pretty much open any book, and if it's written correctly, then and its pacing is tight. If you go to, it's like 2/3 of the way through, it's actually, the term is 0.618, which is a musical term. But the 0.618 of a song is when you get the bridge. The 0.618 of a book is when you get the climax. That's how you know your pacing is good. You can open any book, and if you get that 0.618 correct, when you open it, then you will be in the climax. And so I check my book for that as I'm writing to ensure that the tension is there and that the pacing is correct. And it's a brilliant technique, and I wish I was remembering the guy who discovered it. But yeah, that's how I make sure that everything's good.
I think that's awesome. That is definitely a welcoming tip for, I know, a lot of wannabe authors or new authors who are trying to kind of get the fundamentals under their belt. Yeah.
This is the guy, Dwight Swain, and this is Techniques of the Selling Writer. This is where he talks about scene and sequel. I knew I could find it if I turned around.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, guys, I would like to know, how can readers reach each of you? We're going to start with you, Jay. How can we reach you, dear?
Well, my books are all on Amazon. So if somebody wants to check out my books, you can check them out on Amazon. I do have a website. It's Jays Willis. So it's JAYSWILLIS.net. So it's jswillis.net. I'm on Facebook. I started tinkering around with TikTok. I'm not sure I can keep that up, but I'm trying it. We'll see what happens with it. I don't really do Twitter, except I'm kind of posting my TikToks on Twitter now. Yeah, mostly Facebook, and I do have a website, which needs revamped, but that's a whole other story.
Okay. Whitney?
WhitneySpradlingAuthor.com is my main website, and there's links to all my on Instagram and Facebook. I find Twitter boring, so I can't do it, and TikTok confuses me. So just Instagram and Facebook, and all my book, my one book so far is on Amazon.
Okay. Alexander?
Yeah, so all of my books are definitely on Amazon if you just search my name. But if you want to actually talk to me, like get a hold of me, all my contact info is on my website, and that's just www, there's 3 of them, .srabooks.com. And that's a place where you could actually reach out to me. And of course, Facebook, you can always look me up too.
Okay. Sarah? Jessica?
Hey,
Sarah, Jessica.
Not everybody catches it when I say it the first time. So I appreciate you. Whitney, I'm going to speak it into existence as well. All of my book is on Amazon right now. And so I imagine the future ones will be as well. And also, I encourage anyone that wants to read it to get the audio version. It's like less than $5. No, it's $6, I think, because it is short. It's like an hour and a half, and it's got 3 very distinct voices on it. That's just pretty cool. But anyway, you can email me at writemepoetrypublishing@gmail.com. I am on Facebook at Write Me Poetry, and I'm also Sarah Jessica on Facebook. I've got the other social platforms too. I don't keep up with them very well. I'm trying. I made one TikTok video, and it was of me still putting on lipstick and not realizing the camera was on. So yeah, I'll post it. YouTube. Please check out Write Me Poetry on YouTube. It's all one word, Write Me Poetry. It's really fun. I read some fan fiction that feels like not fan fiction, like it's freaking awesome. If you're a Harry Potter fan, it's tremendous. But I also talked a little bit about my book on there as well, and I plan to talk a little more about it in the future, especially the concept part. So anyway, Write Me Poetry, Facebook, YouTube, and Write Me Poetry Publishing @gmail.com.
Okay. Raven?
Well, I've got a website, and it's ravenoak.net. Don't try .com. Some Chinese person bought it first and wants me to pay them $5 million for it. Ha, 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 ha. So ravenoak.net. If you scroll to the bottom, I have social media links to Facebook, to my reader group on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Goodreads, you name it, I've got it. I think TikTok's the only one I don't have. And so you can find me at those places. You can also contact me on my website. You can also join my mailing list on my website. And if you are in the Pacific Northwest area at all, once COVID is a little more gone, I am usually at all the big conventions. So.
Okay. Well, everyone, I am Opus Knight at opusnight.com. And everyone, I had a lovely time. I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you join us again. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Have a beautiful night.
Thanks for having us.
You are very welcome. Bye-bye now.